brain. Yeah.
You watch Two for the Money.
Two for the Money.
All right, Luca
That's
Nation.
like the last half of it I was watching because you mentioned it on a recent episode, and you were like, I watched Two for the Money. Brandon Lang.
So we're recording
John Anthony, the man, the $1 million plan, the $1 billion plan.
By the way, after that, Brandon Lang did sell his picks, but let me kick us off. So, guys, today we have our collectible episode, our Sunday evening into Monday trading day episode, sponsored by Collectable, where we talk all things fractional. And I got to give a shout out to our partners because if you guys have seen this week, they've added Sports Card Nonsense to the mix. They've added Jay Lee, and oftentimes companies talk. But it's very, very rare where they put their money where their mouth is. And I think what they said to us from day one, and it seems like this is what they're doing, they want more transparency in the hobby. And the only people that are going to win from this, really, not the only, but the people that are going to win the most, I think, are the consumers. You guys get a show from 3 different, maybe 4 different content creators to make your decisions, to base your decisions off of. It's going to create liquidity. It's going to allow for better trading. I could not be more excited. And I want to give a shout out to Collectable, but also those shows and those sponsors, because I think it's a huge thing for the fractional space. And it shows how early on we really are when trying to understand how to price these one-of-a-kind assets, which we'll talk about, because Memorabilia did have a week. And Cage wants me to pound my chest because it's been about a month and a half since I've been talking about Memorabilia. From the first start, I had Mr. Eric Myers, Hayoli Hustle on. He talked about Memorabilia and how cool that is at National. And then we did the live. We talked about it. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about Memorabilia. We'll talk about trading tomorrow, Labor Day. And without further ado, I got to pass the torch to Cage. So we'll talk cards, Memorabilia. What's top of mind for you, big guy?
Labor Day. You mentioned that. I mean, it's a long weekend. Everybody, hope you're enjoying your long weekend. Hopefully, we got some barbecues. Hopefully, we got some good weather. I think it's like, maybe it might have been yesterday. It might have been Australian Father's Day. They kind of got a weird calendar down under. So if any Australians, you guys, I love the Australian listeners. I love the Australian audience. How I feel about those guys. So if any Australian dads out there, happy Father's Day to you Australian dads. Anything with labor, let's see. If you are part of a labor force, happy Labor Day. If you have ever gone into labor, happy Labor Day. If you happen to work in a laboratory, happy Labor Day for you. What else can you do with the word labor?
How many sodas have you had today?
No. I got it right here. Don't worry. I'm all good. That's
your first one? So
and enjoy. Listen, it's fun stuff, man. I'm excited to talk about this. This is a more serious episode. It's all data driven. So if I'm allowed to bring some levity from the non-data side, yes. And I will do that. I'll pump the chest for you. I will give you credit because I think memorabilia is cool. Right, I think it's cool to have this stuff. I have a Babe Ruth ball myself, but I've never really gotten into memorabilia. We've had Rips on the show where he wore nets on his head, and I think he was trying on a pair of Zion soiled pants, and like all kinds of weird different things that were going on.
Something?
No,
I want to ask you something because if we look at the data here that Collectable sent over,
yep.
So there's 21 memorabilia assets,
yep.
And last week only one had a negative return, and I think this is a cool kind of example. So it's a Ruth and Garrick signed ball.
Yep.
And it's funny, like I've heard this before and it makes sense, but let's talk about it. When there's 2 people or 3 people signing a ball or a card, it actually takes away from the value, right? Why is that?
Sometimes, I mean, those guys, they sign balls together, which, there's a lot out there, but I'm pretty sure there was a recent comp of a Babe Ruth co-signed with maybe Mel Ott, I think, that did better or it's valued more than what this is at. So I think you might see this one turn around, actually. But yeah, I mean, single sign is there are certain ones that I disagree on, like Magic and Bird. Those guys are just inextricably linked for their life. They're on the same rookie card, like those are just the guys, They took over basically the league from Dr. J, and when Dr. J was trying to win the championship, he was playing and losing to Magic and playing and losing to Larry Bird, and then eventually got over the hump when they signed Moses Malone. But Ruth and Gehrig, they're linked, man. Those are guys that you would expect teammates to kind of be on the same ball. But yes, a Ruth single signed ball, most people single signed are better. I was able to pick up a Joe DiMaggio autograph myself a couple years ago because I got it on a Yankee team ball, and it was significantly cheaper than a Joe DiMaggio single signed baseball. People want those single sign. They're kind of cool for display purposes instead of having to spin it and say, "Where's the DiMaggio on here?" Oh, he's underneath Phil Rizzuto. Okay, there you go. I got him now.
I don't even pick up what you're putting down today. But let's keep moving. So Will Chamberlain high school uniform up
Yeah, man.
63%.
We talked about that last
After
week, right?
Yes, we did. And that was after a 15% gain. So that's a big bump. And it's something that we're going to see. It's actually pretty basic. And once I say it, you'll realize once a buyout is rejected, Cage, the price skyrockets. And it makes sense.
Yep.
What it shows is there's a big buyer coming in for this amount. And instantly the retail investors, the people buying, 5,500, they're like, this is a good investment. It gives.
Well, let's talk about this in a way where there's, the crypto guys out there, the Top Shot guys out there. We'll talk about it. When a buyout comes in and is rejected, it's a new floor. You know that asset has a floor, just same way that, someone's buying a Top Shot moment or a crypto or, one of these NFTs out there. Here's the floor price. That's the price to get in. That price now has support. That asset has support at that level because somebody was ready to come in and buy it out at that price, right? So it kind of changes it. Before that, you had either a lower floor or an uncertain floor. Now you have that new floor that comes in. It provides support and confidence to people who are holding that asset because of it.
Would you trade that the next day? I think it's going to be interesting to see as more and more shows and do this, like more and more content creators do the show for Collectable.
Well,
you're going to have more retail investors.
Yeah, the
buyout. And the price is going to move faster.
The buyout, I think, was for the other Chamberlain, right? Not the high school one. So I think the reason why we talked about it last week was that because of the buyout, we knew that the one, the eyeballs would be on that. So this one now becomes a bargain. And I think if you kind of go through it, maybe it's good if you do that. Maybe you kind of go through each one of these. You'll see that memorabilia just as a category, jerseys, uniforms, bats, balls, all that stuff, just as a category, they all have kind of gone up. And it's interesting, right? Because, what it shows you is, we talk about this all the time, right? The rising tide lifts all ships, right? You see the top stuff start to sell, and then all of a sudden everything else is going to follow. So, talk about a couple of those things if you can. And it doesn't just apply to memorabilia. We want to talk about memorabilia kind of as an asset class, but, one of the cards you can talk about also is, the Aaron Rodgers Contenders card. Right, that has now, I think, gone up 4 straight weeks in a row. It was one of the bigger movers on Collectable last week also. And I don't think Rodgers has done anything. They haven't played any games, right? I don't think he's done anything. As a matter of fact, there's still some uncertainty around him, right? But everybody's seen the same Contenders auto card for Brady, basically break records every time one pops up. So like, all right, well, if the Brady's worth this, then this one's got to be worth this. Same thing with the Wilt Chamberlain. Hey, look, if his other uniform is this, then the high school one is this. And if Wilt is worth this, and Kobe's worth this, and Jordan's worth this, and that it's the same type of thing. Just to bring it back to cards, guys, this happened a couple of years ago when the '86 Flair Jordan started to take off. Smart people, including Gary V, started talking about the other cards in the set. And started talking about the Elijah rookie, started talking about the Dominique Wilkins rookie, and the Ewing and the Barkley. And even though they're not the peak, they're not the Jordans. When the Jordan went up, people looked at it and said, okay, well, if Jordan went from, 20,000 to 50,000, well, when Jordan was 20,000, Dominique Wilkins was 1,000. Now the Dominique Wilkins should be a couple thousand. Same thing with the Elijah and all that other fun stuff. So same thing going on here. That top part will rubber band and pull up the rest of the stuff as well.
Guys, if we just take a look at the market overall, Cage, in last week, sports memorabilia is up 24.43%. Sports cards are up 5%. The index in general is up 8%. So, the market is peaking. The market is back on the up. I don't know if that's here to stay or not. There are some cards, I got to be honest, that I still think are a little overvalued. And one of them is the Gretzky OPG, right? Like,
let's talk about that, right?
A lot of people didn't listen to our episode because...
No, they did. They did. What we told them was that card is going to go up. And you can ride it up, but then sell. So, guys, let's be specific, right? Okay. So I would be selling that now. And if you listen to our episode, we didn't say sell out right then because we knew it was going to go up. But think about that one, right? And you give the background on that card. Give the what it's selling at now, what it's sold for. Give that stuff if you can, if you have it. So we're talking about the 1979 OPG Gretzky, Wayne Gretzky PSA 9 that Collectable has in the secondary market.
So the weeks before this, it was up 6%, 9%. Then last week it had that huge PWCC auction where it closed at 204.
204.
And this week following, it's now at 197K. It was up 20% this week. What we said, though, the one that was sold on PWCC, that might have been the nicest 9 in the history that we've ever seen. And it was deemed exceptional, which is top 5% of PSA 9s. Where the one on Collectable is older label, and it has those jagged edges that OPGs are known for. So it's really hard to compare apples to apples because of how much better the eye appeal.
Yep.
Maybe it's a little. I'm curious. This is going to be a case study because you're right. This last week, people could ride up a 20% gain. I want to see what the market does. Maybe the market doesn't care about eye appeal as much as we think.
Well, I mean, I think you as someone who listens to the show, folks who are listening to this now, you're able to take advantage of the fact that people just look at the numbers. And they'll look at that card and they see that it was trading at 160 and change. And we looked at it ourselves and said, okay, well, we have a recent sale of the same card, a PSA 9 of the same card sold for $204,000. Well, this one's too cheap. It's got room to run. And we said it's going to run. But ultimately, once it runs and it gets close enough, smart investors, discerning investors, you guys who have the benefit of listening to us, realize that that card is not as good as the one that PWCC sold. It is not as nice. It does not have the same eye appeal. It just doesn't. Take a look at the two of them side by side, right? Now, you can decide whether the difference is more than the 5% difference between the pricing it's at now. Now, folks will tell you, hey, it's still underpriced. I mean, it's still there. To me, if you look at some of the other prices, that card sold in a bad copy, sold for just over $100,000. So we are now, you're talking about a range for that card of between 100 and 200. We're now at the real tippy top of that range on the collectible one. If I were someone holding this stuff, and guys, feel comfortable knowing from me, I do not hold this. I do not hold any collectible assets because of we're doing the show, right? So I'm not holding any fractional. I'm not steering one way or the other. I'm not pushing it to buy, to sell because of any holdings of mine. I do not own any of these, right? That said, if I were holding this and I was smart enough to listen to me and you last week and realize that if you got in, you could ride this up all week, I believe this is now going to come back down to what a median price for this would be. Something more like 165, 170, 175, 180, somewhere in that range that doesn't have that additional, let's call it 10 to 15% added on because of the PWCC designation. And why I would say that is I expect the next one of these to sell to be more in that range, right? I expect the next one of these to sell to be in that 165 to 185 range instead of being at 2 and change, because the next one that sells is likely not going to be a top 10 or 15% eye designation, eye appeal card. And then you're now holding a secondary, asset. You're now holding this fractional share asset on the secondary market that's got a valuation higher than the next one of these that sells, and you never want to be in that position.
I'm excited for what Jay Lee's going to say, right? He's a hockey guy through and through. His first episode of the Collectible Live is tonight. So I'm curious because he knows that market. He's a Gretzky guy. So I'm curious what he says about that card because that's if you're a hockey collector, that's the card you want. And the PSA 10 is out of reach. There's only 2 PSA 10s in the whole world. So this is basically that 9 that's sold on PWCCE. Maybe the only chance most people will have.
You could make an argument that's one of the top 5 of that card in existence, right? Because only 2 10s. And there's double digits of 9s.
I want to shed light on something that if I was an investor and looking at an IPO, I think this is a no-brainer given the trend that we're seeing. Okay, and I'm going to share my screen. I think you guys, when you see this, you're going to agree. So it's this week, September 9th, 8 p.m. They're going to IPO, and I know we're a secondary market, but I wanted to talk about an IPO. Game worn from his MVP season, Peyton Manning helmet. And it's hard, right, Cage? Because here it is, 180K, no retained equity, which we love to see. $5 a share, really accessible. It's hard to – it's hard. What is that worth? What's that worth, right? It's hard to comp that. But in a market like this that's so hot on memorabilia, with prices that have just gone up 20, 30, 50, 60%, the Sandy Koufax jersey went up 86% on a rejected offer. You have a guy who's going to be in culture for a long time. Peyton Manning, to me, seems like a future GM of a team. He's going to be on ESPN The Detail. This guy is not going anywhere. and he's going to be forever linked to Tom Brady. And you see Tom Brady memorabilia and cards go through the roof. I think this is a $500,000 helmet. Whether that's the true comp or not, it's how do you comp something like this? But in a hot market, I'm looking at that IPO for Peyton Manning's helmet.
So a couple things. One, he's one of those guys that people love. He's one of those guys that there are people who are just Peyton Manning collectors, Peyton Manning fans. There's not a lot of people, especially with retired players, who say, We had a question yesterday's Coffee with Cage, like who are some GOATs now that will be irrelevant down the road. There are enough people who collected Peyton Manning from his Tennessee days, through his Indianapolis days, through his Denver days, who are just Peyton Manning super collectors. All you need is one of them to want to buy this. Second, you know what I love the most about this? The $5 entry point. It's one of those things we're learning with different assets, right? When you fractionalize something or you're able to get in at a certain price point, setting the price at the right point. I mean, who doesn't want to be a partial owner of a game-used Peyton Manning helmet and it costs you $5? $5, $10, $15. Now you're multiple shares. I mean, I think that's great, right? It is the very definition of accessibility of something that is otherwise not accessible to the common collector. It's easy to stockpile those shares, easy to buy them, and I think you're right. I mean, I don't think it will take much for somebody who is a Peyton Manning, super fan to want to add that to it. How many? I mean, I don't know when the last time one of these came up for auction, if ever. I mean, how many game-used Peyton Manning helmets are there? So it can't be that many.
So I have a question for a community. I'll open this up to you. Who's a better player? Who had a better career, Drew Brees or Peyton Manning? And why I ask that question?
Very similar. They're very similar.
I pulled up their stats. But why I say that is, right, there's the reality and there's the perception. You hit the nail on the head when you said there are just Manning collectors. People love Peyton Manning. And that's why when, it's so important to look past the stats and kind of understand that investing is emotional. Investing is based a lot on your heart as it is on your mind. And there's so many Peyton Manning collectors. So this one IPO really stuck out to me for all those reasons. Memorabilia is booming. Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers cards are going through the roof. And you have someone who's so beloved, and he's, it's kind of like a tech stock IPOing during the tech boom.
Yep.
So that's something I'm really, really looking at. Something that I'm not so happy about, Cage.
Ooh, I like it. I'm excited to hear this.
And we have
drum roll. What do we got?
We have permission to, talk about the positives, but also talk about not the negatives, but I ask, why is this IPOing? So I'll share my screen and we'll have a little dialogue. I don't get this. This Trevor Lawrence, it's the Leaf Pro Set 2021 in his Clemson jersey. So to me, it just looks like a regular kind of like throwaway card. I know it's Trevor Lawrence, but it's a college jersey. And okay, it was graded SGC Gold. But so were 20 other cards. There's 20 SGC Golds.
How many of them are being auctioned here?
It's a basket of 20.
Yeah.
I don't get it. I don't understand. If I want the card, I would just buy the card in a PSA 10 or an SGC 10. But I don't get it from a fractional standpoint. What's the value to investors on this card?
So not a lot of Trevor Lawrence stuff graded, right? Because of the grading stuff right now. That's a cool card. It's an interesting card. Pro Set's a cool throwback to, the 8 and 9 Pro Set stuff. Barry Sanders as a rookie in that as well. So there are some cool cards from Pro Set. And I think this was one of those, like it was his own thing, like they did his own card, his own line. And I think, what was the IPO price? Was it $5, $10 per share? How much was it?
$5.
So I think the only thing I can come up with for this as to why it makes sense and why it might make sense for somebody like me on it, right, is it's sort of an unimprovable, it's a 10, there's not, that card itself is not going to be a PSA 10 in most places. It's going to be, expensive to get. But if I were out there looking for a stock market type of investment in cards, right, and I believed in Trevor Lawrence, right, but I didn't want to go and buy his Prism PSA 10. Why? Because I can't, because it's not out yet, right? And I didn't want to, try to select what other ones were out there and be combing eBay to try to find a Trevor Lawrence play and pay $100 in shipping or $200 for a raw one, or which one's it going to be. I say, you know what? I'm going to invest in Trevor Lawrence. Let's say I have $100. I want to invest in Trevor Lawrence. I think he's going to have a good season. Football season's coming up, right? It's about to kick off. I think Thursday is the first game. I would say, all right, I'm going to put $100 in Trevor Lawrence. It doesn't matter that it's SGC 10, whether it's gold, black, or whatever it's going to be. It doesn't matter that it's the Pro Set one. I'm going to put my money in Trevor Lawrence right now, thinking that if he comes out of the gate and plays well and performs and has a couple wins and throws a couple touchdowns and not that many interceptions, that people are going to want to buy stock in Trevor Lawrence, and my $5 a share investment might be worth 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 or 10. That's what I think the thought process behind this is. But I'm with you because, as the weeks go by, there'll be more football releases. There'll be him in his professional jersey coming out. There'll be other places for you to invest that $100 or $1,000 in Trevor Lawrence. And not many people will be looking for this particular card in this particular slab as the bellwether. But for right now, there's not that many other places to do it. I mean, you want to buy his college rookie ticket autograph. That's out there. I happen to have one of those. Woo-hoo. Ian pulls fire. But I get it. It's not something that I would recommend investing in, though. It's not something I personally would invest in.
I'll go to another thing that I really like. I really like this card. And I'm curious, Cage, Johnny Unitas.
Mm-hmm.
Do people know him? Is he like the George Mikan of football? Because
sort
I
of.
think he's one documentary away from all of his stuff exploding. This guy's a legend of the game.
Yeah.
This guy's a legend of the game. This is talk to me because you know his career a little bit better than I do, but I respected him a lot. I know his name. I don't know why he's not brought up more in the NFL circles when people invest in GOATs.
And
I'll pull up why
his playing career was 65 years ago. We're approaching nearly 70 years when he played. I mean, that's a gorgeous rookie card, right?
Gorgeous. Look at this 8. This is from 1957.
And that's the reason, right? So how many guys from the 50s are still
$20,000?
It's cheap. I know it's a beautiful card, and it's a beautiful set. It's one of the more iconic football card sets that are out there. Bart Starr's rookie, and there's a lot of rookies. Bobby Lane. I mean, I'm going to leave Paul Hornung. I'm going to leave a lot of guys out, but that is an iconic football set as well. Johnny U. A lot of people don't know him. You know him, which is interesting, but I bet you anybody listening who's your age or younger is like, who? Johnny what? Johnny Manziel? Johnny who? And that's part of the problem, right? And it really is part of what we were talking about, right? The 50s. Tell me some iconic rookies from the 50s in baseball, when baseball was the sport in the 50s. Football was not, right?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, I'm looking at Mickey Mantle cards.
Mantle.
PSA,
Mantle.
PSA 8 is $2 million, that card.
Right.
And then you have Johnny Unitas.
But who else? But who else in baseball, right? Right?
Well, that's not fair. I'm not a baseball guy.
Hank Aaron. That's a key rookie.
I don't know when he played. I know his name.
Oh, so like even by decade, Hank Aaron played a lot of decades. He played a lot of years. Right, you get Aaron cards, but his rookie card's 54. Jackie Robinson in the same kind of era. Like there are iconic names, but even that, look what you're. So here's the point, right? You're not a baseball guy, right? You're sort of a football guy, I guess. Not even really that much. And there's only a handful of people you can name from baseball, America's pastime, especially in the 50s, that are relevant and investable and stuff from the 50s, right? It's difficult for you to even throw those names out. It's the same thing with football from the 50s. Football is not huge. Football is getting bigger now. I would say that it's still behind baseball and basketball. From a collecting standpoint right now, I think people put football probably second, modern, to basketball, because people have, Mahomes and all these young, Brady and all these GOATs and, and stuff that are playing now. But I think part of the problem with 50s football is, just like there are a handful of names. I can throw a handful of 50s names out there that you might be investing in, like, before that, right? So Jim Brown, his rookie's in the 50s.
He's iconic. He's iconic.
Like I said, Bart Starr. But yeah, I mean, listen, there's the problem I have with it is 80% of the people who are getting into cards right now don't even know who he is, and 10% don't care. The other 10% might buy it, but you don't want to have, an asset where there's that little demand for it. It's reflected in the price.
This is a few things. So he won 3 NFL championships, but that was before the Super Bowl. Then he won a Super Bowl in 1971.
Yep.
YouTube, I'm just looking. He's ranked the number 6 best player of all time. Rankings or whatever, but that's a ranking. But here's why Fractional is awesome. I would not spend $20,000 on this card cage, but I would put $500 into it because it's a bet, and that's what we're doing here. All of these are bets, but what we're trying to say is what bets are better than others, right?
Yep.
So when you have something like this, all of your theses are right, but if you have $1,000, $500, and you're kind of deciding where to put it, this is a guy who hasn't been discovered, who may be discovered, right? And when he does, you're getting in so early. I see so much upside and maybe no downside. I'll tell you what I was thinking about, and I had kind of a thought about BGS today. It's the same kind of example. So we look at comps in today, snapshot, what's going on today. But we also have to remember which direction is it trending. So right now, SGC and BGS comps are almost identical. But BGS comps are at its highest, and BGS's brand is at its low. So more than likely, there's no more room to fall for BGS, and there's a tremendous amount of upside. Same things with this Johnny Unitas card. He's out of sight, out of mind. You're getting his card at the basically the bottom of what you're getting with a tremendous amount of upside. It could be $100,000, $200,000 card with any media attention to him. So that one stuck out to me, Cage.
I mean, it's feasible. He played for the Colts. They were a great team. I'm just trying to think, barring the lightning strike of a Netflix show or a documentary or something like that about him, I don't know what the catalyst is for that, other than, people like, oh, well, if Patrick Mahomes' rookie card's a $4 million, if Mahomes has this guy's career, he would sign up for it right now. But career numbers don't do. So you got your computer up in front of you. You know what I want you to do? Type this in, right?
So
Yogi, Y-O-G-I, Yogi Berra, B-E-R-R-A, Yogi Berra awards, right? So it's as he's looking that up, and he can tell you how many times the guy won a championship, how many times he won an MVP, what he did, his stats, his career, because, part of what you did with Johnny Unitas was he talked about how many times he won and what he did. But wait till you hear what Yogi did and how many times he won and how many times he won the MVP and all that stuff. But here's the fun, right? He's going to tell you this. Go ahead, please.
This is insane.
Yeah.
Well, I'll start with the biggest one. 13 championship rings.
13 rings. Okay. 13 championships.
He appeared in 14 World Series as a player and another 5 as a manager coach. He was AL MVP in 1951, 1954, 1955. Never finished lower than 4th.
Never lower than 4th.
1950 to 1957.
So for an 8-year span, top 4 MVP voting, won it 3 times in a 6-year span.
15 All-Star games.
15 All-Star games. I mean, literally remember, he played before Mantle. I mean, he played while Mantle was playing, but he was the GOAT. I mean, you had your Ted Williams, you had your DiMaggio, you had these guys, but think of the wins. He was a catcher, so that's a little difficult, right? But look at those numbers, look at all the championships, look at all the the personal accomplishments, you name it. And I'm a Yankee fan, so I love the guy, and he stayed relevant. He did like the Money Store commercials, he did the Aflac commercials. He was like, cash is the same thing as money, with the duck, and all. I mean, he stayed relevant. He was at old timers games, for as long as he could. I mean, he was as relevant as can be in the lore. And I mean, managed. I mean, you name it. You couldn't ask for more as an investment. But you know what? I'm like, I gotta go buy his rookie card, and I bought like a PSA 9 Yogi rookie from the 40s, and I'm like, this is great. There's only, I think, 110, and it's owned by Kendrick, the Arizona Diamondbacks owner. So there's only single digits, or I think there might be 10 nines now. I'm like, this is great. And I sat on it, and it did nothing, and it continued to do nothing. And I remember somebody telling me, sell that Yogi and buy a Kareem Abdul-Jabbar with the money. Thanks, Gary. And he was right. And the reason why was because nobody cares. And you can talk about Johnny Unitas' stats, until you're blue in the face. Look at this guy's stats. And unfortunately, those stats were compiled in the 40s, 50s. And we're talking about that's a full life expectancy for people here, right? That somebody who was coherent enough to watch him play, right? Let's say they were 18 years old, watching him play in the early 50s, means they were born in the 30s. means they're in their late 80s to early 90s now and probably are buying Polydent and diapers and not baseball cards. So that's why it's
You're
difficult.
alienating our audience.
I'm sorry. I'm just telling you. I'm not alienating, but I am actually explaining why our audience might
I've
not
been
buy
DMing with
somebody.
80 and 90-year-olds all the time.
Yes, but those are the ladies, and we don't want to hear about what you do with them. All right? It's okay.
Let's shift gears.
Yeah, but this is supposed to be a serious episode. Can I talk about some of the stuff that I saw? So here's what I did. We were a little interesting last week. We talked about some stuff that was priced too high. That silver basket, you name it. So what I tried to come into this episode and look for were, let's call them bargains. I don't want to call them dumpster diving, but I wanted to find 3 items that fell into a specific category. And I was able to find 3 that I think are things I'd recommend. If not by now, at least kind of create yourself a little watch list from our episodes, right? And keep an eye on these, because one of them I think may fall a little lower. But the first thing that I checked is we're in a sort of an up market here. Andrew talked about the memorabilia market going up, the card market up 5%, 13% overall, all that's all the fun stuff that we're talking about, right? I want to look at cards, and I want to look at one key indicator, and that's I wanted to bring you 3 plays that are trading below their IPO, which means, were they priced incorrectly? Is there something going on with them? Have those guys fallen off? Are they out of sight, out of mind? 2 of them have just been out of sight, out of mind a little bit. And the other one is because the guy's injured. So I think they were all priced correctly. 2 of them are because it's the off season, and one of them, like I said, is an injury. So I think the IPOs are fair prices. And I think that, these things will not only get back to those IPO prices, but will increase. Let's start with the baseball one, and then we'll roll into 2 basketballs, right? So IPO'd at $5, was $5 last week, which is flat if you came in on the IPO. You now have a chance to get in lower because it's down to $4.75. It's the 2017 Gold Refractor BGS 95. Gold Refractor BGS 95 of Ronald Acuna. Okay? $4.75 a share. You thought $5 was easy to get in at? $4.75 is even better. This is a card that obviously was trading significantly higher than the $5 IPO price during its trading window, but Acuna got injured. Baseball will be ending in a couple of weeks, and most teams will not continue playing. That means the Juan Sotos of the world that are priced higher than Acuna right now, they're going to come back down to earth. Not because Juan Soto is injured, but because he's going to stop playing, and he will be in the same bucket again as Ronald Acuna, as will Shohei Ohtani, and as will, Tatis is playing, so we'll see what happens. But most of the league is going to be out of the playoffs. There's only going to be one person winning a championship. And we're going to go into next season. Tatis will probably have an MVP under his belt. But we're going to go into next season. And guys like Soto, Acuna, Vlad Guerrero, the young names that we talk about, they're all going to start from scratch again. And Acuna is
one
one of
guys
those
with chips on their shoulder, too. Guys that
have to come back.
To think about it, and I have to see, we came into the league together, and he's doing better. Like, these guys are competing against each other. That was Vlad Guerrero last year, right?
Yep.
Oh, I came in with Tatis. I'm the fat guy. He's the star. I'm going to show him type of thing.
Yep.
Sorry to use the word fat guy.
Listen, I love it. I'm a fat guy. So 475 brings that below the IPO price. I'm not telling you jump all over it right now. It's something to watch. I like that it fell below the IPO because that moves it into bargain territory. But there's no catalyst happening for Acuna over the next month. He's not going to be in the playoffs. You're going to have an off season, and then you're going to start about spring training. This is a card, an asset, something in the secondary market that as football starts and people are looking at football, then basketball starts and people are looking at basketball, and we're in the winter time and nobody's talking about baseball. This may be something you can start to really steal in the 4s, in December or in January, before the pitchers and catchers reporting starts to heat up, before people start looking at baseball. And it may be one, if you keep an eye on it over the next couple of months and you're able to scoop it, if it drops, that you can probably sell back at IPO or higher than IPO before the season even starts. Doesn't even matter what he does, because people start paying attention to baseball again, and that'll be the story. That's how I roll into basketball. People are focused on football right now. Andrew talked about it. He'll mention all the memorabilia stuff. We talked about all that stuff. We talked about Aaron Rodgers cards going up. There are several other football cards that have gone up. Football is definitely moving the market up. Even the Brady card that we talked about last week, the SP Authentic, has moved up also in anticipation of football season. You have Mahomes stuff moving up. Vegas still currently has the Chiefs and the Bucks as odds-on favorites to win their conference and meet in the Super Bowl again. It would be Odd to see a repeat of the same two teams in the Super Bowl, but right now those are what the odds are. So who knows? But people are banking on that, and Vegas usually gets things right. So that you're seeing the football rise. But because people are moving their disposable income, their investable income on Collectable into football, people are forgetting that basketball starts. I think it's October 18th. I mean, you're going to have basketball games before you know it. You're talking about, 5 weeks out now for basketball. And I think you have the ability to take advantage of it. The biggest red alarm, like woo, 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 you see people put those little like messages up there that I was coming down from $18 per share last week to $12.50. Something that IPO'd at 20. So at 18, you're talking about only a 10% below IPO, but now at 12.5, you're talking about a tremendous drop off, right? Talking about a huge drop off, down $7.50 a share, down a huge amount from its IPO, with now a market cap of $80,000 instead of the market cap closer to $130,000 where it was. I might have missed it. Did Zion Williamson break his leg this week?
I think he's gotten better.
I mean, did he fall off a cliff? Because if he didn't, then the fact that the price of his secondary market
he's a big boy,
fell off a cliff doesn't make much sense, right? I mean, the share price fell off a cliff. 18 to 12.50, that's insane. Talk about like an overreaction. Somebody might have dumped out of this looking to get into Tom Brady. This might have been some big, shareholder, somebody who owned a bunch of this and just wanted to exit the position. Who knows? And we may never know, and it doesn't matter because it's something you can use to your advantage because this was something that was trading higher than the IPO. It's off season. You know what's going to happen. You can have week 1 of football now. Half the guys people are investing in are going to go up, and half of them are going to go down. Josh Allen's going to win, and it's going to go up, or Josh Allen's going to lose, and it's going to go down. Lamar Jackson's going to win or lose, and those prices are going to go up and go down. People are going to start to sell them probably cheaper than they're buying them for now. And after week 2, after week 3, you're going to start seeing leaks of actual basketball being played in uniforms, not Tyler Hero's twin brother in China that's not really Tyler Hero. You're talking about these guys are going to start reporting, they're going to start playing, you're going to start seeing Zion dunking. Someone's going to show a picture of Zion in decent shape, and all of a sudden you're going to have the bowl effect, and everything's going to go back up. And you don't need this thing to fly, right? You don't. If it just goes back to what it was trading at last week, nothing, right? There was nothing going on with this. Zion didn't die, Fanatics did not take away his license. Nothing happened to Zion in the last week that we know about. But if it just goes back to last week, you're talking about a 550 increase week over week, which works out to about a 40% increase, just to go back to where it was last week. So it doesn't have to do that. You can go up a couple bucks, and you're sitting there.
Once we get rolling, there's no stopping us. Zion.
Any reason and so what we're talking about here is the 1920 National Treasure RPA BGS 9. So talk about Zion. I just want to make sure I'm pointing everyone in the direction of the actual card to invest in at $12.50 a share.
It's the right play. It's the right play. We'll talk about Zion maybe on tomorrow's episode or leading up to the season. It's just an interesting type of. He reminds me a little bit of Trae Young going into last season.
Yep.
Right. It's the same type of thing. We know what he's going to do. The dunks don't impress us. We need his team to get to the playoffs to really see what he could do and get on national television. Mm-hmm. So the investment to me sound. I'm a little worried about Zion. There's an investment that I hate and there's an investment that I love to wrap up with. Okay, which one do you think we should go with first?
Well, I have my third card.
Oh, I apologize.
I have my third card. I'll be quick with it because I know you have your stuff. I had Acuna, Zion. My third card is also basketball because Zion's more of a speculative play, but I found a guy who I think it's like investing in gold. It's investing in a blue chip below the IPO. Right now, it's not significantly lower than the IPO, but it's still checked that box, right, of where it is. And maybe you pull it up for me. Right? Maybe you can.
I'm on it.
All right. Now, this to me is the exact card that you use fractional for. I would love to own one of these cards myself, but I don't feel like selling my house or my children or both, depending upon what it's going to be worth. But this is one of those where it just to me screams buyout, just because there are, how the PWCC auctions go. Brent says, there's just not enough to meet the demand. There's just not enough supply to meet the demand. Can you pull up the Steph Curry National Treasures RPA, please? Trading in the secondary market. So here is a card that IPO'd at $10 a share. All right. I believe it has a market value now, market cap of about $422,000. There you go, right? So you got it. You pulled the right one up. And you look at the chart, right? You see the IPO, you see a dip, you see it working back up, and now you got another dip.
This is incredible grade, by the way. You don't get this type of grade on these types of cards typically.
BGS 95, National Treasures Auto. You know, we know that a one of Steph Curry sold for millions of dollars, right? This is obviously not a one of one, but look at the patch. Look at the multicolor on the patch. Look at the card. Look how young he looks. It's a BGS 9.
The surface cage is insane for this card.
BGS 9.5, valuation of about $422,000, which is down 49.7. You check it. See, you got it right there, 422.5, right? It's currently $8.50 a share, right, for a Steph Curry National Treasure RPA. Now, this is exactly the kind of find we look for. 2 reasons. Number one, below the IPO. 2, it's taken a little bit of a dip. It was $950, now it's down $850, which means you're getting it at 10% off. Probably for the same reason that the Zion fell, because nothing bad happened to Steph Curry that I know of. People are just looking at football. Somebody might have taken some shares out of this one, liquidated, and put their money into Tom Brady or Patrick Mahomes or whatever it may be. That allows you to get a little bit of a bargain here. And you know what you're looking at, right? You've seen stock charts. You've seen that W sign where it's got a little bit of a dip, down, dip. That it's going to continue on that W. That's just, a little bit of chart reading fun, right? That's going to do
panic sellers, long-term holders, the rest of the panic sellers finding a better place to get out right here.
That's it. And then you see it go back up. And this is just one of those things where, could you see it being bought out? 100%, because you just don't see these things sell, right? And if you have a Curry person, a Golden State person, somebody who is a big Curry fan and wants to come into the market and they're not buying a one-of-one, this is the card they're going to look for. The 09 rookie National Treasure in a BGS 9.5. It's just one of those things where if you told me right now, Collectable got called this week for a $600,000 buyout or 6 and change buyout, and you're getting a 50% premium on this, it would not surprise me at all. I know they haven't sold for that, but there are just not a lot of these, especially in that kind of condition. So maybe that doesn't happen this week, but I think it's one of those things where it's already at a discount. You're getting it below IPO. It's down 10, 12%-ish from last week. It's down, from 9.5 to 8.5. And it's just none of these out there. So it's got a lot of potential exits for you, all higher than where it's at now. So, God, you got 2 more.
I believe, this is just my opinion, that Curry's going to win MVP this year. And I think we're really interesting with Steph Curry because his career is second to none what he's been able to do. He's broken shooting records through and through. And I'm curious, does his legacy change with an MVP this year? We so quickly forget Cage because we have such a recency bias.
I think he should have won it last year, but
we were talking about it. We really were. This is the same team, a little older, that was a 73-9 team. The Iguodala's back. Yes, they're older, no doubt. But this team still has some tread on the tires. Wiggins is going to be a great number 4 for them. And I'm really excited to see what this team does because all the attention, Brooklyn and the Lakers and all their moves, yet you have a team that's been cohesive and they dealt with a little short-term adversity, but they've been the team of I would say they're the team of the decade from 2010 to 2020 because how they've changed the NBA. I know the Heatles were amazing, but I'll put the Warriors as the team of the decade. And I think people are really, really, really sleeping on Stephen Curry. So that's an amazing play. Cage, I want to ask you, we talked about type 1 photography.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about type 3? Can you explain this? So I think this is so cool. You don't get this is a 1910 photo of Ty Cobb. But it's
a cool card. You know what's really funny is, I looked at these things at the show. They have definitions. If you type it in, it might even explain it in there. There's type 1, type 2, type 3, type 4. What makes this cool, even though it's not a type 1, is it's clearly a photograph that was used for a card. So it's clearly a photo. So type 1 is used, it's off the negative, right? So it's developed from the actual negative, right? And then as you go, it reminds me of, and you can just look it up so I don't butcher it. It reminds me of a Michael Keaton movie called Multiplicity, right? Where they figure out how to clone him. And each time they do it, it gets a little worse. A copy of a copy is not as good as the first, right? So it's the same type of an analysis there, right? Like the first one's right off the negative. The next one could be a copy off a copy. The third one could be a copy off of it. And each successive time you lose a little bit of something until they've cloned him so many times that the last one basically is, he's eating applesauce and can't say any words. And so I'm not saying the type 3 Ty Cobb is that bad of a multiplicity there, but did you look them up, or is it in the
yeah, it's a second generation photograph developed from a duplicate negative or wire transmission during the period which within approximately 2 years of when the picture was taken.
Right. So it could be done from a wire trend. So I mean that's how a lot of the photographs are done. It has a year exchange, so it's not something that could be done now. You know what I mean? It's not something that's done 50 or 100 years later. It has a time time set. The only thing I would say about those cards, those pictures, is we need a little bit of an increase of pop report on them. It's what's going to make bats kind of move. Now you have, that pop report being created by PSA. They've always graded them, but the pop report, once you get that type of thing where you can actually tell people what the population of that Babe Ruth says farewell type 1 photos are, there's only a handful of them in the world, or that type 1, 2, or 3 version of that card, of that photograph for Ty Cobb, then all of a sudden you're going to see some real gains in that market. Go ahead.
So the reason I'm looking at Ty Cobb is, with this whole NFT crypto boom, which is like we're futuristic, right?
Yep.
I always like to counterbalance it with like what's ancient, right?
Mm-hmm. And
here you have the type 3 photograph of Ty Cobb, but how often do you get a freshly graded PSA 9 of a 1910 card?
Do you want to know what's funny? More often than you'd think in that particular set.
Really?
Yeah. So it's great reading. So I think we're bringing a different audience to this, right? So we'll look at that card, but do me a favor, pull up another window and type Black Swamp Find. And I encourage everybody out there to do this as well. Black Swamp Find, right? And what you'll get there is you will get, go ahead, click it. You'll get a pretty cool story about, right there on PSA's website. There you go. So there you go, the Black Swamp Find. And the cards, same as that card you had, they're slabbed to say Black Swamp Find. See that right there on the deal. And there's another one. And there's one in mint 9, you name it. And look at them all basically fresh to Mars. So the story goes, of course, that there was a find of these. I don't know, attic. I don't know if it was in a lunchbox. I mean, the details are right there. But point being, somebody found a stack of these. I think they might have called Heritage. Heritage Auction might have been the ones who sold these things. But basically, you're talking about like a stack of these mint 9.
This looks like Tyler from Card Talk.
Mint 9, Mint 10, Gem Mint 10's version of these. Someone with a green background.
Tyler from Card Talk. Someone tag him, please.
You gotta zoom it up there. I can't see. It's pretty small where I'm looking. But point being, these cards were significantly more expensive before this find, and the pop reports grew significantly on these. It's one of the few cautionary tales about buying vintage where we always like to say, the pop report is what it is. It's never going to grow, especially in the high end. Well, then something like this happens, and all of a sudden it's boom. As a matter of fact, I think they had to roll them out over multiple auctions so that there wasn't this explosion of population. That said, even that card, if you look it up, the pop is still low. It's just not as low as you would think for a 115-year-old PSA 10. But yeah, I mean, listen, I like to bring fun stuff to the episodes. But if you're a fractional investor and you're not in the weeds with vintage baseball cards, now you get to read about the Black Swamp Find. It's a pretty cool story.
I think this is what makes our show cool, because there's often days like Cage and I, we talk a lot, but there's days where we don't hop on the phone and we don't discuss the research we find before these episodes. Kind of like fresh take, and we have a duty. Like we'll call each other out. We'll say we don't agree, and it's cool to have that. Right here, I am. I'm like a PSA 10 of a 111-year card, and you're like, no, not.
But it's
so
still
rare.
very rare, man. It's still very rare, but it's not as rare as it otherwise would have been a couple of years ago.
All right, last two. Do you have anything else?
No, I never have anything. I just come here to listen to you.
Luca game used memorabilia is not that cool, guys. Let's just be frank about it. Like, he's gonna have a million other game used jerseys, and he's probably gonna give them away to fans and kids, and he's gonna do tours and stuff like that. So I wouldn't feel good investing or holding a Luca game used jersey.
So you be frank. Can I still be Cage? So here we go. Right. So what? I gotta ask some questions. What if it was a Luka game used jersey or uniform signed by his mom? Still not good.
What's the
What
question?
if it was? Would it change your investing strategy? Would you invest in that if his mom signed it? No. Okay.
No.
What if it was his mom's game used, signed by him?
We're getting paid to do the show.
Well, because obviously everybody who knows what I'm talking about has the Luca's mom signed his autographs. So
She does do that.
So,
I know that for a fact.
Trying to make a little joke on the Luca stuff, and his mom signs his autographs for him. So, but yeah, listen.
Is she playing the games for him too?
The point is maybe the point is 100% taken, which is game used. What makes those crazy prices for the game used stuff that we're talking about, the Wilt Chamberlain stuff, and even Michael Jordan and those things, is that this was not a huge market then. When Michael Jordan wore his Air Jordans, people weren't collecting the old vintage Air Jordans because they weren't vintage. He was just wearing them,
Mm-hmm.
So same thing with the jersey. It wasn't as big of a thing as it is now. It's why Darren Rovell collects tickets from older events because people weren't saving them. It's why Bro Namath collects video games sealed and VHS sealed because nobody was saving them, right? But now, not only are they giving them away, they wear probably a different jersey every game. They wear a different. They might wear multiple jerseys. They might wear a different jersey every half because they know what they're worth and they know they can get money on the secondary market. And they sell them. They owe them to card companies. You name it. It was one of the things I was thinking about when you brought up your Peyton Manning game-used helmet. I don't know how many helmets they go through during a season. He might have wore that helmet for the whole season. Maybe he has a couple of helmets, maybe a backup helmet. But it's not that he's not putting on a different helmet every quarter so that he can hand them off to somebody and say, here you go, here's my game-used helmet market. But it's rare. Whereas the stuff that's going on now, rare is not the word for it. It's not rare. So I get your point, and I think you're 100% right.
That's really all I got for you, man. I do think Tiger Woods is worth a look, whether that's his Sports Illustrated PSA 10, which is here with. I think I think Tiger. He's an interesting. There was Tim Grover once said. I quote Tim Grover way too much, but whatever.
You do. And I have to stop making my Muppets joke too, because every time you say it, I want to make like a Super Grover joke, Sesame Street. But
he said he's only met two people that could walk in a room and like control a room the way they did, and it was Jordan and Tiger Woods. So there was nobody before Tiger's scandal that wasn't like in awe of this guy. This guy would just, he changed golf. He made it popular. He was a figure, and I think he's fallen out of flavor a little bit, but I truly believe that a lot of Tiger stuff is going to hold long-term value, whether that you want to go as cards, autos, or memorabilia. To me, this is a guy because of all the difficulty he's gone through, and he's a private guy in general. When he's done, he's done. I think he's going to fall off. You're never going to hear from him again. And I think that's what's going to make his memorabilia. Like if you could get his game-used red shirt, how he wears that on the final round, I think that's so iconic. And I think Tiger Woods, just as an athlete to invest in, is really, really interesting right now.
Listen, I like it. I should have brought this up when you were talking about Johnny Unitas. I mean, Tiger might be something that's different, but just I don't call it a public service announcement to our folks, right? Be careful in what you're investing in. I'll go back to the same question we got in yesterday's Coffee with Cade about like the go-to or goats now who might not be relevant 5, 10, 15 years from now. Look, if you're investing in these fractional shares to trade in it with a window, a month, 2 months, 6 months, a year, whatever it is, be mindful of that window and be mindful of the relevance of the people you're investing in. The Johnny Unitas one, I watched something yesterday called The Doctor. It was on NBA TV maybe, but it was about Dr. J. And it was an hour-long story about Julius Erving and how he literally was the best player in the league. He was the face of the ABA. He came in, left the Nets, obviously, because the Nets couldn't afford paying to get into the NBA and his contract. And he came over to the 76ers, and he was the best player there. And, then obviously the league had, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, you name it, but he won a championship. He lost to, Magic one year. He beat Magic one year. I mean, he was clearly the face of the league, and he kind of saved the reputation of the league, because when the leagues were ABA, NBA, they were kind of beating each other up. There were a lot of public, nonsense out there, and it was it wasn't exactly the most bankable league. People weren't investing in it. Now, invest with the NBA. It sounds like, a no-brainer. Back then, it wasn't. And he was the first, Jordan did the shoes. He had Converse. I mean, the first, national shoe brand. He was doing toothpaste commercials. I mean, it was Dr. J. He was huge, man. And then, obviously, that generation ended, and you moved into Magic, Bird, Jordan, and you move on to the next. You move into Kobe. You move into LeBron. You move forward, right? People don't care about Dr. J. I watched this, and it's funny. Who's the Tony Kornheiser and his co-host? What's the co-host's name? You know
Mike
who I'm talking about. Wilbon was in it, and he's like, "Listen, I wanted to see Dr. Every game was Dr. J." He says Dr. J was the guy, and then there were other people doing commentary talking about how they felt back then in the '70s when Dr. J was playing, or late '70s, early '80s, and they said it was like Muhammad Ali, like Mickey Mantle, Babe Ruth, and Dr. J. Dr. J was the guy for basketball, the way we talk about Jordan now, right? And nobody cares. Seriously, nobody cares. And this is one of those guys that's top 20 all time, top 25 all time in the sport.
He checks all the boxes too. Iconic. He had that fro. He had the rock, the cradle. People know him. They recognize him.
But the thing is, why I bring him up now is you talk about how Tiger's going to disappear. Right. So you say Tiger's just going to disappear? So did Dr. J. I mean, he basically was gone. I mean, he out of the limelight, you name it. He showed up at a dunk competition every now and again, and he's starting to make appearances now. It cuts both ways. If you're in the public eye.
So if I could draw this chart, I was probably not going to do that. There's this. He has this initial rise, like Patrick Mahomes, just all up and up and up, right? Then you kind of had that scandal that Tiger had, and he fell off. I do believe eventually he'll tail off, but I think there will be another peak. There will be another, whether that's him leaving, right? His retirement is his final tour type of thing. I think that carries with it, as we call alpha, before it fades away. I do agree that the fade away, once it's faded, it's done. There's no.
What do you think about LeBron? I mean, you said don't buy Luka because you don't want anybody buying his current uniform. Tiger, you think's going to have a little bit of a run up. What do you think, LeBron? Because it is Luka's.
I think LeBron might become the president of the United States, and it's the most scary thing that I ever.
It's not secondary, but there are still shares available, right, of the LeBron exquisite. Isn't that something that?
Yeah, you want to talk about that? I have it pulled up here if you want. I don't like the retained equity. That would worry me as an investor because I don't have control. I don't have voting power. This guy could buy it out at any time. Sure, that's probably good in a sense for me as an investor.
The flip side, right? Doesn't it mean that person's confidence in the card that even though he's willing to put it out there, or she is willing to put it out there, they are willing to put it out there that they want to retain it. I mean, it's an 8.5, it's a little lower grade than what some other ones are out there at. But didn't one recently sell a slightly better grade with maybe a similar patch for over $2 million? And this one's just half that.
I think it was a 9. I think it was a 9.
It was a 9. It is an 8.5. So I mean, it's amazing to talk about a 7-figure card as a bargain. But is this now a bargain price with still some of it left at its IPO?
If
range.
I was a holder of this card, Cage, I might try to bump it.
Well, it looks that nice. You like it?
I don't know. I'd have to inspect it and then look at the corners, but that's a big deal. That's a huge deal, right?
10 auto on the back, right? 10 auto.
10 auto, and here if this corner goes to 8.5, this becomes a 9.
You know what I like about this? This is another one, just like the Curry National Treasures. Say what you want about LeBron or whether you like him, you don't like him, you name it. This is one of those iconic cards. It's a 7-figure card, an 8.5 grade. It's a $2 million card, 9 grade. It's it's one of those cards that I don't foresee ever really going down, and you're able to get it at $10. You're not buying one of these yourself. I don't care what grade it is. Definitely not for $10. So it's one of those things that Fractional is made for.
I think this was a good show. I think this was a really good Fractional show. I think we're catching our stride. I don't know what I'm saying now, but I think this was a good show. Gage, any final words? I think we covered so much. We went memorabilia.
Final word. I don't know. I don't have silicone volcaniosis, new ultramicroscopic silicone volcaniosis. Is that a good word? Could that be a good final word? I had to learn that in second grade. I had to learn that was one of the longest words in the in the English language. Pneuma ultramicroscopic silicone volcaniosis. One word. Is that a good last word?
And they say the educational system isn't broken.
Do you have any last words? Any final words?
Enjoy the holiday. I think, guys, after Labor Day, things pick up. I'm so excited for the end of the year for us as a as a podcast, as a network, with what we're doing. The month of August was big for us. I'm not gonna lie. We knew a lot of people before we went to national, but when you meet face to face, you really get to understand why people are into the hobby. What's their core intention. We got to meet so many amazing people, and I think that's helped us really double our audience in the last month. And we really, really, really want to bring you guys interesting shows, valuable shows for the rest of the year. And I couldn't be more excited.
And lucky you guys, you know what you're going to get? We're going to do fantasy. I mean, Andrew and I are in different leagues. We tried to put, us in different leagues because, I didn't want him to completely destroy me. I have not done fantasy in over a decade. So I have not done fantasy football in a very long time. And I have pick number 11. So I'm not getting any really good running backs. I haven't really researched this, but you will get the update from Andrew and I as part of the collectible episode. Just as a little fun. We're going to tell you how we're doing in fantasy. I predict Andrew goes 2-14. And I go 1-15.
That's fair. My team is so bad.
Oh, you already drafted. I haven't drafted my team yet, so at least you drafted.
The people in our leagues are sharks, man. They like study their type. I'm gonna. They know everything.
They're just taking your money. But you got Mahomes.
Yeah, but that's like the difference between every quarterback is not that big of a deal, right? The difference between each running back.
Mahomes should be worth a couple wins just on his own.
He might be. Luca Nation, thank you guys. We'll see you tomorrow. Appreciate you.